All right, joining me now, Jim Pfaff. Welcome back to the Alegly Show.
Hey, good to be with you, Alec.
Always good to see you. A lot going on, as always. Political news cycle moves at lightning speed. This weekend, we got the Democrats having another one of these no kings rallies, no kings protests. And it's, again, I think the premise they have, Trump is the king. So it's already, I think, the wrong title that they have. They never say any kingly things that he's done, but it's the no kings rally. So what's your take on it?
Well, I think it's interesting that people who promoted a censorship industrial complex to entirely shut down conservative speech, utilizing the power and authority of the federal government against the Constitution, by the way, and against the Bill of Rights, that also began a massive lawfare campaign against every one of their political opponents that sought to force Americans to take a vaccine that we now know was a pretty dangerous vaccine. And I could go on and on and on. It's kind of funny hearing people like that talking about doing no kings. But on the other side of it, let's take a look at Donald Trump. When you look at the fact, just one key factor about Donald Trump's presidency this time around is that every single judicial order that has been brought against his policies, he has followed and kept it working through the court system. And he's had a lot of success in the court system by working the system. To my knowledge, there's not one judicial order that his administration has disobeyed. And so what he's doing is reestablishing justice here in this country away from the loss of justice that has happened when Democrats were in power. And just that one factor alone is really important. But one quick thing, the No Kings Rally, as its main argument, opposes the use of the National Guard to protect ICE facilities, the National Guard going into states. Now, Donald Trump certainly kind of, in his words, leaves it open whether he'd use them to stop crime in the cities in a general sense. And quite frankly, if he was just throwing National Guard in to be the police force in cities, I would oppose that. There's nothing constitutional unless they're invited in and there's cooperation and actual help asked for, like LAPD did during the LA riots.
Right.
But what he is doing with them is something that's immeasurably constitutional, and that's to protect ICE facilities, which are federal property. Even if you have a lease agreement in a city with some facility, that is considered federal property constitutionally as well. And he has every right to have them do that. So just to the opposite of the insane call that Donald Trump's trying to be a king, Hitler, all this stuff they say about him, he's exactly the opposite. And if we have any concerns, it's by a large number of elected Democrat politicians who would assert government authority over Americans' lives and against their rights if they can do it again.
I think you're right. I'm going to get deeper into the ICE attacks and all that stuff in just a second. But your point, I think, is great about how many of these injunctions have come against President Donald Trump. I mean, it's astonishing how many there have been in just the first 7 months of his second term. It blows away the amount of injunctions with Clinton, Obama, even Bush combined. I mean, he's getting injunctions, and even the Supreme Court ruled in his favor. But a lot of people have been encouraging him, hey, just ignore these judges, just ignore them. But he is not doing that. He's still going through the legal process, just like you said. But when they build it up like this, just when it's with intent, like they say he's a king. So the No Kings Rally, it's just you assume, yeah, he's a king and we're going to protest against him. It's the same it's as dangerous as when they call him the Nazi and the fascist, because it gives you that reason to say, what did we do to the kings? Like what we fought against. George Washington, you would argue, held the original No Kings protest, right? And they tore his statue down. So it's like, what are we talking? You're making it sound like these are people you should fight violently against. And that's the message that you're putting out there.
Well, and this actually comes out of the same spirit as the entire Russia hoax. I mean, when Donald Trump got elected, you had a collective freak out here in Washington, D.C. about what Donald Trump would do. And as I had been arguing leading up to that, when Donald Trump gets elected, he's going to kick over all the trash cans in Washington, the ones that I saw that were sitting there with festering trash, that he was going to kick it over and show the American people exactly what's going on. And he has done that. But they're not just doing protests like this No Kings thing, they're encouraging violent action around the country. And make no mistake, and I'm not going to hold back on this because it's the fact, Democrats are promoting the violence that is in the streets. And for all those who say there's no such thing as Antifa, just ask Andy No. Just ask my friend Nick Sorter. Nick Sorter's like a son to Myra and me. I mean, we're really close friends with him. Just ask what he's going through. Our national field director, Chad Caton, was there helping protect Nick in Portland. Just tell those people whether there's an Antifa or not. But the Democrats are promoting violent activity on the streets, and these kinds of aggressive things like this No Kings protest is the propagation of lies. I mean, it's nothing more than a propaganda effort to try to give the impression to the American people that Donald Trump is doing something that he wouldn't even conceive of doing, much less is he doing in reality.
And just before you jumped on here, I was breaking this down about because the text messages that came out from the young Republicans, that, they're making sure that stays as the top story. It's going viral. But and then you have the Jay Jones, his text messages that got leaked. And if you look at the two, now I don't agree with any text messages, privately text exchange being leaked on either side. I don't think that's right for anybody to do that because you're not saying it with the intent for it to go public. It's a private conversation. But even in those private conversations, ones are being stupid and saying what people are labeling as racist against blacks or Jews. The other one is calling for violence and pissing on the graves of the Republicans. Even those chats that were leaked are vastly different, and you could see that. And it seems like, and that is the argument, it's coming from both sides. But it was the Charlie Kirk who was murdered in public. It's Trump that was attempted to be assassinated twice. So they keep trying to press it as hard as they can in the press that this is a both sides issue, but we're only seeing it from the one side.
I think it's absurd when you look at these truly rancid texts from these young Republicans. I mean, that they are rancid and stupid and actually do reveal something very bad about some of the people who were doing that. Some were just reacting in stupid ways. Some had something really bad. But when you think that they're going to take the texts of kids who are being stupid and compare that to Jay Jones, who actually is seeking to be the chief law enforcement officer of the state of Virginia, and he literally is calling for the assassination of one of his political opponents, the then Speaker of the House, and to have and to not just stop there by putting two bullets in his head. If I only have two bullets and it's Pol Pot, Hitler, and the former speaker, he wants to kill the speaker. Like, this is really insane. But when you add to that he wanted this guy's wife and children to have to watch these violent acts taking place, murderous acts. I mean, you get this guy wants to be chief law enforcement officer. You got a bunch of punk kids that don't have any authority over anything except for an organization that, to be candid, not every young Republican group is bad. There's some really good ones, but let's just be honest. Many of them are just hanging out, drinking at bars every once in a while and having fun, and that is no power at all. But Jay Jones would have very real authority and power, and he has a murderous heart. I mean, he does have a murderous heart. If we're talking about the biblical standard here, Jesus didn't just say in the Sermon on the Mount, he said, the law says if you murder, then you're violating God's law. He said if you have murder in your heart, you're a murderer. That is literally Jesus' interpretation of what Jay Jones was doing. And yet we're going to make the kids' tweets the big deal. Again, it's a desperate move. I mean, I understand turnabout's fair play here. I grant that. But the reality is it's a desperate move because they know that it is significant what Jay Jones was saying privately and that it has very real world implications. And we need to stand against that as a culture and not let people like that get elected to office.
What a coincidence it is, too, Jim, that we have these text messages from Jay Jones that have been making the rounds. He is running for political office. Then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, comes these text messages from the young Republicans. Oh, look at it. Let's take the attention away from that and push this. So I agree. What they said was stupid. And I said, I tell my kids, even when you're in a chat room with somebody, you have to watch what you're saying on the phone, no matter where you're saying it, because people can screenshot anything you say, take it out of context, and post it online, and they can ruin knowing you. So you have to be careful when you do this. Say what you mean all the time when you're doing this stuff.
Well, even more importantly than that, so what we need to teach kids is not just to avoid that problem that can come back and bite you. We need to teach them to have hearts such that they wouldn't do it in private or public. And by the way, there are a few posts out there saying every one of these kids should not be qualified for political office ever. Well, actually, I agree with that. I mean, I don't think we want to pass laws to that effect. But yeah, I don't think that they're qualified for political office. But Jay Jones is not qualified for political office. Like they're saying this about these kids, but if they're really honest to their opinions, then they ought to be saying the same of Jay Jones. And I would agree. Jay Jones is disqualified for political office. So what this becomes, and you're right about this tit for tat on private messages, what it becomes is a mere political tit for tat. I'm actually glad that we found out about it with Jay Jones, because we'd have found out it in some other way later in a significant circumstance. But that said, these are political tit for tats. We play these games to try to win, and politics is war by other means, and it doesn't include killing, or at least let's hope it doesn't, because Democrat politics actually has led to some killing of Charlie Kirk, for example, and almost of Donald Trump, because you inspire these things. So that we need to call that out, remind people that the Democrat Party is not an American party. Not in any way is it an American party. It opposes every American ideal that matters and that has made us the greatest country in world history. Not greatest because of our innate goodness. That's not why we're a great country. We're a great country because our constitutional system is the best security of liberty and the best security of opportunity for individuals. And we need to stand up for that system.
Yeah, well said, Jim. And the last thing, and I'll button this up there with the No Kings rallies, they use these words, these buzzwords like no kings. You see with Bernie Sanders and AOC, stop the oligarchy. Like they have these buzzwords, kings, oligarchy, Nazis, fascists, and it's all this stuff to paint you as a complete enemy of the country, somebody that doesn't need to be beaten at the polls, but needs to be physically beaten and murdered and taken out of our society. And so even when they talk about like the oligarchy, the majority of the billionaires supported the Republicans. So it doesn't make any sense when they're even trying to even say that, when they say, oh, we got to fight the oligarchy. And they had all these millionaires that showed up at Kamala Harris's rallies and all that stuff. So it's just a matter of trying to put a dangerous label on people on the right.
Well, Robert F. Kennedy Jr. rightly called out not just Bernie Sanders, but Elizabeth Warren and a few of these other senators in recent hearings that he's been on, who receive hundreds of thousands of dollars from the pharmaceutical company. Listen, the problem of oligarchy and corporatism is a bipartisan problem. It really is a bipartisan problem. Presently, Democrats get the most benefit from that, but it is a bipartisan problem. We need a government that could never have enough power to give corporate interests any power over large corporate interests, any power over other business interests. So that's just a general discussion of what we need to change in government. But Democrats are most guilty of oligarchical measures right now. I mean, they attempted to set up an entire censorship regime within the Department of Homeland Security. They were literally going to have an Orwellian speech code group put together in the Biden administration. That's an oligarchical thing that's taking place. I don't even want to hear Democrats try to make an argument, or independent leftists like Bernie Sanders try to make the argument about oligarchy. You guys are feeding the oligarchical system. You're as much oligarchs as anybody else. Get off of our backs and go back to constitutional levels of government, and then we don't have to worry about any of this. We don't even have to talk about it if we just followed Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution, because Congress would have such useless power except military power to protect the government, the country. And that's all it should be anyway. You guys are our problem.
Yeah, I remember the Ministry of Truth that they were putting in there. I remember all that. And again, I still think when the Democrats frame it as, the rich against the rich, they're not talking about like we would think like the rich, okay, Elon Musk and Jeff Bezos, like these are the rich. They're talking about regular working class Americans that are working, that own a home, that own a car. They hate you for that. They think you don't deserve to have the house, the car, the family. You should be giving that to all these people that aren't doing anything for it. And we're already doing that through the welfare system and through the WIC programs and all that stuff. But they seem to, it's more of an attack against people that are trying to be successful, trying to create something, people that own businesses. They hate all of you for doing that. And that's what it seems to me. It's not so much as against all the multimillionaires like the football players and the baseball players. It's against the guys that are working hard, creating something, creating wealth, and they hate you for it.
Well, if you think about it right now, all the Elon Musk types are flocking Donald Trump's direction right now. And why is that? Because what really pissed off Silicon Valley more than anything else is their disgust about the culture wars, whether it was abortion or gay marriage or all these things, and it morphed into something much more angry. And so you had a worker class within the Silicon Valley companies that rose up and were able to convince their leaders to go the Democrat direction in this radical manner. But there's really a strong libertarian style streak in Silicon Valley, and it's gravitating toward Donald Trump. Because what a whole lot of these people are trying to do, and when I say this, I think of like everyone on the All In podcast, you know, Jason and Friedberg and Chamath and David Sachs. These are guys that actually are real business people. They're not necessarily conservatives in the way that I've always think David Sachs is, but not the other guys necessarily. They've come on board because they're just trying to do freaking business and build things. And that is an encouraging shift that I see taking place that I think Democrats have lost by and large. You still have some of your holdouts in Silicon Valley, but by and large, they've lost that crew as well because these were typically more libertarian-minded people who are fantastic businessmen. Listen, I had a dad that had a very large business. I lived and breathed that growing up. When I listened to Chamath and David Sachs and even Jason and David Friedberg talk, I hear guys that actually do understand business, actually are trying to build things of worth and value. And you can agree or disagree with them, whatever you want. That spirit still exists in America. And those people who are very wealthy and have been very successful actually exhibit better proclivities towards good. And obviously with recognizing they're humans and we might disagree on this or that. They express more of what the American dream is about than any Democrat elected to Congress or anywhere else right now. And we need to pay attention to that and feed off of it in a way.
We do, and we should be trying to create. We should be trying to build, and that's what this is all about. That's what the opportunities are there for. Build wealth, create a family. So that's what these things are supposed to be. They're not Democrat values, or I should say, liberal values. They are mostly on the right. But let me get into the ICE attacks because yesterday on News Nation they had the thing to sit down there with Cuomo and Stephen A. Smith and Bill O'Reilly, and Tom Holman was one of the guests there, and Cuomo grilling him on ICE over wearing the mask. Stephen A. Smith, same thing. They should have to present, and I thought they should have to present who they are. And I thought Holman handled it very well, just say in the protection of these guys. But name another agency, law enforcement agency, that has an increase of attacks against them, violent attacks that's up 1,000%. And so these guys are trying. If you don't like the law, that's one thing, but you can't hate the people that are trying to uphold the law. So what's your take on this craziness that's going on with ICE?
Well, if they don't want the masks, then a law needs to be passed in the federal government to constrain federal employees from doing so. But there has been very good reason for them to mask up because there has been very real harm done to ICE agents. They're law enforcement officers who are being threatened in severe fashion by people who oppose the effort to remove illegal aliens from this country. And Donald Trump administration is doing it exactly the right way. Tom Homan is a hero. I mean, this man is a hero. He may not be perfect in the sense of, you can tell he gets angry and stuff like that. And okay, whatever. But the guy is actually a hero doing the work that needs to be done. The reason it seems so severe is because the problem is severe and critical. We still have tens of thousands of criminal illegals that they haven't yet been able to get a hold of and deport. And you've got 1.6 million people who have self-deported in this process. So this is actually working in a good way. I saw a video of a guy, I don't know who he was, but he was going on the street and he says, what do you think about 3 million people that Donald Trump's deported? Oh yeah, it's horrible. And they'd say this, and how do you compare it to Barack Obama? And he made the point, well, actually, it's Barack Obama who deported 3.1 million people, and Donald Trump's only deported 400,000. And then they're still saying, well, yeah, but, this is a problem. I mean, it's like all that they're doing is following the law. This is about following the law and dealing with these things as the law prescribes. And they're at threat and have a right, I think, at this stage to be able to put masks on, because the violence that's happening in the streets against ICE, the violence that happened in Dallas, where someone literally killed 2 illegals attempting to kill ICE agents. The violence is severe. These people need to be protected, and they need to be able to do the work that they're doing. So I just find the argument absurd against it. By the way, I understand the optics. It does look like weird optics having the masks on. But I have to ask a question, Mr. Antifa. If you're so against ICE wearing masks, why do you wear masks? Yeah. Why do you wear these silly-looking cartoon costumes that hide your face? Why won't you reveal yourself? Why won't you put yourself on camera? So, and I almost say, listen, when you're willing to do it, maybe we'll consider it as well. And because that would put them at the same kind of potential threat. I don't think they'd be as much threat, because in the right, we don't try to kill people. But they need to expose themselves as well. So otherwise, just shut your mouth.
I agree. And I just think that, to your point there, too, this is something that's been happening for years. Bill Clinton deported 10 million people, whatever it may be. Obama deported 12 million people. So it's like this is the law that these guys are trying to do. And the only reason why ICE is coming under attack and why there's any upheaval is because of the media and the Democrats that have put a target on them. They've called them the Gestapo. They've told you that, look at what these people are doing. And they make it sound as if they're just coming and rounding up American citizens in American cities. And that's not what is happening. So the media is accelerating this. They could easily quiet this down. The Democrats could easily quiet this down and say, hey, listen, all these people came in illegally. We had our chance. Now the Republicans have it. The law is that if you're here illegally, you have to be deported. You have to follow the law. If the Democrats ever said that, it could quell some of these attacks against ICE. But instead of that, they're full court press on encouraging the violence that we're seeing against ISIS. So it won't stop until the rhetoric stops.
Well, when you consider the numbers of deportations by presidential administration, as we just mentioned, 12 million went out of the Clinton administration. Do you know what has changed? Because you had Democrat participation with it back then. Yep. Do you know what has changed? Merely the politics. See, Democrats are not about the rule of law. They're not about following the law. They only will follow it when it serves their political interest. When you consider why Bill Clinton was able to do that without Democrats screaming and crying, it's because at the time they saw that the unions would benefit from getting rid of illegals that might threaten the jobs of union workers. And that's fine if you want to protect the jobs of union workers, and I'm glad we enforced the law that way then. But what's changed? Now the change is they get a combination of chaos and extra voters and extra representation in Congress because of what's been doing through the Census Bureau. So that's why they're willing to have the chaos in the immigration system now, because it serves their political benefit. The Democrat Party's not an American party. They don't believe in the rule of law. They don't believe in the Constitution. They do believe in raw political power. They are literally the modern day Machiavellians. And actually, they're not even as smart as Machiavelli was. They're kind of stupid about it. And we're suffering the consequences of it. But thank goodness Donald Trump is president, and his leadership is phenomenal. Like he's definitely one of the top 5 presidents of all time because of his sheer skill and capability of being a leader and understanding what America is all about and what it stands for. And we're all benefiting from it, even through this short-term chaos.
And I think you could argue, like, we say the deportations, Clinton and Obama, and what has changed. It's really Trump that has changed. It's Trump that has turned, it seems like it turned all these people crazy, because I don't remember, like, if you were a Bush supporter or a Rudy Giuliani supporter, I don't remember anybody being called a Nazi and a fascist and, like, vicious, like, attacks on you just for, Rudy Giuliani became the Republican mayor in New York City, and, people opposed him, but I don't remember them being violently against it the way that we're seeing with Trump. I don't remember ever seeing anything like this. It seems like it's on a whole nother level with the media, the liberals and the voters. They just seem to be on another level of stupidity when it comes to this.
Well, in fairness, both Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush got a little bit of the Hitler-Nazi thing from Democrats, but that's just because Democrats are so horrible. But yes, you're right. It's never been at this level before. And you didn't, in either of those circumstances, have calls for violence from Democrats. Democrats are calling for violence. They literally are. They are supporting and encouraging Antifa in its efforts to oppose ICE. It's one thing to have truly peaceful protests where you're holding up a sign, the stereotypical holding up a sign, ICE is bad, ICE, whatever they might say. I mean, that would be one thing, and that'd be a whole lot different. That is not what's going on here. They are encouraging violent protests. These are not peaceful protests. Even the one, and by the way, many of the ones, assuming there really are a lot of people this weekend for the No Kings rally, which I'm yet to see, and it may happen, maybe it'll materialize, but how much of that is not going to be violent? I mean, there's going to be some violence that's going to break out somewhere in those things, however they've organized it. And again, I'm waiting to see how big it actually really is.
Yeah, well, the last time they had the No Kings rally, one of the guys that had the No Kings flyer in his car is the one that murdered Melissa Hortman, the Democrat up in Minnesota. So who knows how it's going to go. And there's also a $50,000 bounty on ICE officers coming from Mexican cartels, which is another thing that could create havoc, because you have illegals here looking to get a $50,000 take and then get the hell out of the country. That could set up a very bad situation as well, because you got people with feel like they have nothing to lose, and they have an opportunity for a $50K bonus.
That's right. That's exactly right. Listen, Democrats are doing nothing to stop that side of the problem. Now, I'm not going to blame them for the cartels doing the bounty, but shouldn't that coalesce around them some urgency to say, okay, we need to back off of this and we need to fix the problem? It doesn't, because they're not interested in doing that.
Yeah, so when you find yourself on the side of the cartels, we're in a problem here. Even when we're bombing, Trump is bombing the Venezuelan drug cartels, they're sticking up. Oh, those guys need a due process. They're driving a boat full of fentanyl for the country, and they're like, oh, no, we should protect those guys. So anyway, the last topic here, probably, in my opinion, the most boring topic in politics here is this government shutdown that's going on now, 2 weeks going. It doesn't look like there's any end in sight. Every time Jeffries gets up there or Speaker Johnson gets up there, they have said the exact same thing for 2 weeks straight. What is your take on the government shutdown here?
Well, initially, you can, when the CR was going through the House and first presented to the Senate, okay, you can make it a both sides thing or whatever. But the reality is, once that continuing resolution came out of the House, that set the stage and should have set the stage. What Democrats are fighting for. Republicans have done the work, as much as they say that Republicans aren't doing the work. They did the work. They did a clean CR. Straight up, we're just going to keep spending levels the same, and then let's have these arguments afterwards. What Democrats want to do with this CR is to reverse everything in the one big beautiful bill related to health care and a few other issues. In other words, they want to hold the government hostage so that they can get what they want. They don't have any inkling of an idea to talk with Republicans. Donald Trump's is winning this debate for Republicans right now. I mean, I'm not going to give very much credit to Johnson and Thune. I'll give him credit for standing in there, but Johnson owes his speakership to Donald Trump. He's the one that whipped the votes that made that happen. John Thune is out of the Mitch McConnell wing, although he's done a little bit better than McConnell did, but he's still getting his legs. If Donald Trump weren't sitting in the White House, Republicans would have already caved. It would be done. And it needs to be a strong effort. The American people are siding with them. The American people like the fact that Donald Trump is trying to make sure the federal workers, like in the military and other things that need to get paid, he's trying to make sure that they do get paid. Everybody else, just like with any other shutdown, I went through 2 of them working on Capitol Hill. Any other shutdown, people say, yeah, no, I didn't miss that at all. Okay, people are not screaming and crying over it. Now, the Democrats do sort of have an issue that they can put their teeth into on health care, because the polls show that they win on that. But the problem is, it's not the biggest issue in people's minds. It's far from it. The biggest issue is immigration and overall government spending in the size and scope of government. Those are the big issues, and the economy, obviously. So the Democrats have nothing to stand on. Republicans are winning this debate. And if they continue down the path they're continuing on, then they have a good chance of losing in 2026, in spite of Republicans' best efforts to grab defeat out of the jaws of victory, because Republicans in Congress are just that way.
And it's just, you're right. But it just seems like too the same, like the Democrats will be saying, well, the Republicans own the House, the Senate, and the White House, so it's their shutdown. And the Republicans will say, well, here it is. You have the opportunity to open the country, and you're not doing it. And it's the same thing. The clean CR, the Democrats want to give healthcare to illegals. That seems to be the same thing going back and forth. And again, it's just, other than the people that are getting affected, like military, which Trump has made sure that they're going to get paid, nobody's really paying attention to this. And I think it's just the Democrats trying to stay out there and trying to get something against Trump because he's winning on all cylinders. He had the historic peace deal over there in Israel. So I think it's just their attempt to try to cut him as much as they can.
Yeah, and what they're trying to get out of it is a no kings rally so they can continue to have their violent protesters do their dirty work on the ground because they think that that's going to be useful for them to win elections. I mean, it's really an absurd and frankly evil argument.
Yeah, it is. All right, let's take it away here. The obviously everyone's eyes are on the midterms, but we have this election right in front of us in just a couple of weeks here. So, what kind of races are you keying on? Look, I know I'm here in Jersey. I'm praying to God we get Chitterelli in there. But any races that you're keen on, and what are you working on over there in the Conservative Caucus?
Well, we're still taking a look at what's going to be happening in 2020, and obviously all the key Senate races will be involved with in some way. We're putting together our bus tour that we're going to run all over the country next year, and we're going to work on voter registration and obviously looking to be in every state where we have a state director, expanding our state outreach and taking a look at targeted areas of the country. We hope to see change come in. But in terms of the two big races right now are Chitterelli and Winsome Earl Sears in Virginia. I honestly, I wish I could predict that Winsome Earl Sears is going to win. There is definitely a movement in her direction right now because of the Jay Jones issue and because Abigail Spanberger looked like an idiot on that debate stage, not saying anything. And I think that gets to voters, the ones, it energizes voters against her that might not come out, but it also puts some question in her base of support. In New Jersey, I am very hopeful that Chitterelli pulls this off. I have to say, and by the way, he's a little bit moderate in some areas that bother me. I mean, that's just a reality. But he is doing a fantastic job as a campaigner right now. He has effectively taken control of the issues that needed to be put at the top of things. My understanding is I think Kellyanne Conway is an advisor to that campaign, so that doesn't surprise me. My friend Kellyanne Conway is fantastic. He's running a good campaign, and I actually think has a chance to win. There was a Quinnipiac poll that had him down 6. I'm just not a big fan of the Quinnipiac poll. They don't get it right regularly. Other polls have it much closer. I don't think he's a shoe-in to win yet, but he's right there in the portion of the game he needs to be in with a surge in Republican registration, and he does have an edge on enthusiasm, although it's not a huge one, but he does have an enthusiasm edge with his voters compared to Mikey Sherrill. So looking closely at that, and I've done a few things to try to help out in New Jersey, not big, but I got some friends who are doing some things there, and I think it's going to be helpful. I think there's a real push happening to get votes out that a lot of people aren't noticing or talking about publicly. So I think Chitterelli has, of the two, the better chance to win, and very well may. But Winsome Sears, boy, I hope she pulls it off because they have not run a great campaign. They are taking some effective use of this story, and that's going to help her a little bit. But man, it may be a sad loss, and it will be a really sad one because Abigail Spanberger is a deep state jerk. It's just terrible. Crazy.
Yeah, it will be wild to see. But I think Chitterelli has a much better chance than Curtis Sleewood does of being mayor of New York City. I think that goes without saying. But we'll see what happens. Keep our fingers crossed here. I'll have you back on before then. Jim Pfaff, always a pleasure to get you on the show.
Thank you, my friend. Talk soon.
All right, great.